Okay.
Here's the results, Stephen, of the poll.
Okay, great. Okay, you can see my screen, okay? So, can you see the screen okay, Mike?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, so, well, welcome everyone. It looks like the most of you are not familiar with the CSET tool. And so this will help give you some overview of what the CSET tool is all about. And so what I'm going to cover today is kind of an overview of what the tool is, how to perform a self-assessment, how it works, the overall process that's tied into the tool, preparing for an assessment, and then getting started with the tool and using the CSET for a risk assessment, and then also some common challenges using CSET for assessments, and then the CSET curriculum modules that I'm working on. We have some already developed, but I'll be talking about more about what we're going to be doing with modules that will be more interactive for students and any users that want that free free modules. And then I'll do a demo of the tool and then do Q&A. I want to make sure I get to the Q&A, so I may go through some of the presentation fairly quickly because I think it's important for you to really see the value and what's available in the CSET tool itself. Let me see, I'm going to rearrange. Okay, there. Okay, so what is the CSET tool? It's a cybersecurity evaluation tool. It's standalone in the way we use it. There's actually an enterprise system that you'd have to work with the Critical Infrastructure Security Agency or Idaho Labs to get more detail on the enterprise. But we're really focused on this from an academic perspective, although we've used it with industry and consulting. So anyway, it's a guide for asset owners and operators through a systematic process of evaluating operational technology and information technology. Just a little background, my experience with CSET started back in around 2010 when the national security agencies were looking at, and the NIST was actually developing the cybersecurity critical infrastructure framework, and I was attending different workshops. They had 4 different workshops across the country to help develop the critical infrastructure framework. As a result of that, I was working with some of the people at the Idaho Labs at that time, and that's how I really got tied into working with this. And we actually had some boot camps that we provided for different companies using the CSET tool starting in 2011. So the overview of the CSET tool, so it provides a framework for analyzing cybersecurity vulnerabilities associated with the organization's overall industry control system, and for information technology. So it's both OT and IT structure, and you can actually do those risk assessments with both environments, with all the different subject matter experts involved. It consists of a technically sound methodology to identify, analyze, and communicate to security professionals, and not just security professionals, but for the business people as well for that company, the various vulnerabilities and consequences that may be exploited by cyber means. The ability for the user to document a process for identifying cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and then it suggests methods to evaluate options for improving your security based on existing standards and recommended practices. So performing an assessment, again, it provides this disciplined and repeated approach for evaluating an organization's security posture. This desktop software tool guides the asset owner and operators through a step-by-step process to evaluate their industry controls and their information technology network security practices. And the users can evaluate their own cybersecurity stance using many recognized government and industry standards and recommendations that are integrated into the CSET tool. And I'll show that in the demo and go over all these various standards and practices. As I mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security, National Security Communications Integration Center developed the CSET tool application, working with the Idaho National Labs and others at a no-cost end-user tool. So like the labs also provide some consulting on using the CSET tool. And how it works, again, by asking a series of detailed questions about system components, architecture, as well as operational policies and procedures. And these questions are derived from the accepted industry cybersecurity standards that are integrated into the tool. And those standards are updated on a regular basis, and also new standards, like we mentioned, the CMC 2.0 is in there, and I'll talk about some of the latest upgrade standard that came in the latest CSET upgrade. When the questions are completed, CSET also provides a dashboard of charts showing areas of strengths and weaknesses, a prioritized list of recommendations for increasing the site's cybersecurity posture. It also includes common practices, compensating actions, and component enhancements or additions. And like it might identify in a network that you need a firewall where there may not be one in your existing network, those type of enhancement additions. And then it supports the capability to compare multiple assessments, establish a baseline, and determine trends. So looking at the process, the assessment process can be used effectively by organizations in all sectors to evaluate ICS or IT networks. When I say sectors, the 16 critical infrastructure sectors is really what I'm talking about. And so looking at it, you select the standard or standards, determine the level of assurance, and I'll talk about this, and there's weighted answers based off of the selected standard and the assurance levels that you identify. And then there's a diagram of your network that you can tie in there with the components or the assets that provides a set of component questions. And then it does an analysis of gaps based on the answers to those questions, and then develops charts and reports. So that's kind of how the overall tool works. So looking at each one of these a little bit in detail, you select the standards. The users select one or more government and industry recognized cybersecurity standards. And then CSET generates questions that are specific to the requirements. Some sample standards include DHS catalog of control system security, the NERC, NIST 882, 853, and then the critical infrastructure framework. That's just a few, and I'm going to go over each and every one of those pretty quickly in the demo, but just to show you what that looks like. And then second is determine the assurance level. So the security, what we call the SAL, and that really is looking at what the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the assessment. Are those going to be low? So like if you were talking about a SCADA system, say a pipeline control system, which I'm very familiar with, confidentiality could be maybe medium, integrity could be high, availability is definitely high. So it would depend on what the business owners of that system would identify. And so anyway, that kind of gives you that part of it. Then the next part of the process is you take the diagrams, your network diagrams, and it contains a graphical user interface. So you can develop those within CSET tool, or there's now different ways to develop that using other templates that you can integrate into the system. And it also creates zones. So if you have a IT/OT, you can actually set up zones for each one of those, and also remote. So if you're looking at remote systems in a distributed SCADA environment, then you could actually set those up in different zones. And it also has a set of icons for each one. This is one from one of the modules I've actually have in Clark Center that you can use on a disaster recovery, business continuity, and risk assessment course in separate modules. And this is one on medical at a medical facility. So you can see they have some of the medical devices in that diagram capability. Then it answers, the CSET will generate questions based on the topology and the security standards, the SAL and the networking you've identified. And the assessment team can select the best answer to each question using the organization's actual network configuration and implemented security policies and procedures. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but this can be challenging in trying to get students in an environment to understand and use all of this. So notes can be entered or files attached to individual questions, flagging them for further review and providing clarification. Each question has associated reference information that can be provided for clarification that can be provided by those subject matter experts. And the system also displays the underlying requirements, any supplementary text. So if you have a question about what is really in this standard, you can actually click on that particular question and it'll tie it back to the standard and why it's important and how it might impact or relate to your organization. And then you have the review and analysis reports. It provides these dashboards. It also provides some drill down to look at more granular information where you can actually set up project schedules to address the different high critical issues that you may have. And it provides the top areas of concern. It provides a executive summary so that you can review this with your management and other staff members, but also develop a presentation so that you can get a direction on what you're going to spend money on to help address the high impact threats that have been identified. And in preparing for an assessment, you have to download the tool, of course, but you need to adequately prepare for the CSET self-assessment. This team should review policies, network and topology diagrams. So be familiar with the company, the inventory list of critical assets and components, the critical business that you have, the previous risk assessments which you should have if you're doing this in a continuous improvement process, IT and ICS network policies and practices, organizational roles and responsibilities. So this can cross different departments within an organization depending on what level of the risk assessment and what it's going to cover. If it's an enterprise risk assessment, it would cover all aspects of an organization. And then staff should also understand their operational data flow. That's a lot for students. So I'll tell you how we kind of do this as we're going along. And then this is how you get to these. And we'll share this information, the presentation, all that, but these are the different ways you can go to CISA to get the link to download the CSET tool. Again, the desktop tool. You can go to the Idaho Labs, or you can go to GitHub and download it. So you have two options, but the local PC is the one that's free and requires less. It's the one that we're using, and I'm going over. Just some talking about risk assessment, what it kind of does, it does the data collection, it provides standards and regulations, and it looks at vulnerability assessments. I'm going to just briefly go these. You'll see these when you get the presentation itself. The risk analysis, it also does that for you. It also provides some recommendations, and then the reporting. So, and it's based on whatever that industry might be on the recommendations that it identifies, along with what your subject matter experts help provide. So here's the challenges that that a lot of times I haven't really talked about. But this time I'm going to give you some information, and we're going to try to resolve this with some of the work I'm doing with these new modules. I'll talk about it, and using AI and avatars to help cut down on some of the complicated, I'd say, assessment challenges. So the complexity and the learning curve, you need to understand the tool, and then the training requirements to get familiar with the tool, data collection and documentation. So you need to have a comprehensive data gathering of your systems, and this means also the people are very important. So the resource intensive, there's a lot of time and effort in a real world assessment, and dedicated personnel, assigned dedicated personnel to manage the assessment and to spend the time in this. So if you're familiar with an SAP project, it's very similar to that, where you're going to have subject matter experts, both from the business and from the IT and OT, that are involved in this. That's a cost to the company. I've done these for businesses. 2 months is not out of the question for one of these risk assessments on a SCADA environment. Customizing and relevant is that tailoring assessments and the relevance of the standards. So making sure they tie into, you have the right standards in place, and understanding those standards, and then interpreting the results can be complicated. So that's why you need someone that has some experience in these risk assessments, along with tying that to the business side of the organization, and then keeping this as a continuous improvement process. And then this is kind of when you download, they'll give you the information on what the requirements are. This is not supported on a pure Mac, but of course you can virtualize your Mac and be able to use the platform on a Mac system. And we have students that have been doing that for quite some time. One quick thing on what's new on the current 12.032 version. So CSET version 12 includes the incident management review module. So for the incident management review, it's based on the principles that a resilient incident management function can improve an organization's overall cyber reliance. So the IMR consists of a series of questions, the answers to which provide insights into how an organization can improve its ability to identify, analyze, and respond to the incidents in a repeatable manner. So that's just an example of these updates that you get in the different frameworks. And so I'll go into the demo here in just a second. Before I do that, I just thought I'd just cover what's coming up, the CSET modules. We'll include a scenario based on the critical infrastructure sectors, and the modules will have students use AI subject matter expert avatars to simulate answers to the CSET tool questions based on the sector scenario. So this will help make it more interactive and cut down on the time it takes to get through one of these modules in like a semester or in a week, in a 1 week course. The modules will be available on NcCyTE and the Clark Center, and the timeline is starting with a network diagram example, and then IT, and then an IT/OT, which will be SCADA using medical. But we'll be looking at all the critical infrastructure sectors and developing. There are some out there already. The network for medical disaster recovery and business continuity, and there's an IT and a SCADA that are going to be provided by the fourth quarter. That'll include the avatars is what we're shooting for. So, and then this is some of the, my email. I'm retired from Eastern New Mexico University, Ruidoso now, so you can get me with my Gmail. I am still a consultant with NcCyTE, and then the CISA is, here's the CISA download, and you can also Google the INL for CSET if you'd like to do that. So let me bring up the tool, and then I'll get some questions here in a minute. See, so we have about 25 minutes, hopefully, to go through the see, there's one question. Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see the CSET tool, Mike?
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
So I'd already logged into this, and I'm not going to go through the download portion. I'm just going to go over the tool itself. So first of all, let's just look at, so here's the new assessments where you can identify. So these are all the different practices and standards that are available. I'll scroll down kind of quickly just to give you an idea, quick idea, and then I'll go try to touch base on each one of these. So they're really focusing on critical infrastructure sectors. So let me go back up here. So you have this the CISA cross-sector cybersecurity performance goals. So this will tell you all about each one of those in detail. You can get a detailed review. The ransomware readiness assessment, that's really an interesting one to go through. The NIST framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity, that's version 1.1. The network diagram component-based assessment, which is already out in Clark. That's an example of where you can just do an assessment based off of your network components, your assets. And then there's one on LAN, mobile, radio, rapid assessment. So I'll tell you, I haven't worked with a lot of these. So that one I haven't really done much work with. So, but they really are trying to give this for everyone that in the critical infrastructure sector that can use, there's different specifics that they can use that would be beneficial to each one of those. And then CISA sponsored reliance and maturity. So they have the CISA cybersecurity infrastructure survey, the reliance review, and then the external dependency management practice, and the ransomware readiness assessment, and then the CISA minimum viable resilience assessment, and that's in draft mode, and then the CISA incident management. This is what is that incident management review that that is their new standard or practice that they put out there. So maturity models, here's the CMC, as we mentioned before. So you have both the 2.0 and the 1.02. In the energy and electrical, the cybersecurity capability maturity model, the solar cybersecurity risk tool, and the wind, which I've used the wind in some of the boot camps that we've done at Ruidoso. There's 4 wind farms in the area, so working with some of the boot camps there to help the technicians have a better understanding of the risk that are involved in the wind energy environment and the SCADA side of it. And then how often is the updated from revised standards? Is it immediate? Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what the cycle is. Usually when there's a new version or an update of a new version standard that's within this tool already, then they do an update. And then if there's like the incident management one, that was something that just came out. When those come out, then they go ahead and update the tool. You can still use the old versions, you just won't have those standards in there. And then in some cases, the older versions don't have some of the new functionality. So, but like if you go out to Clark and you use those versions that are in Clark, they're going to be older versions. So, but you can upgrade to the new version and still use the Clark modules. So another, the wind security evaluation risks, the NIST 7628 guidelines for smart grid cybersecurity, the NERC SIP 02. So these are all these different standards that are available that different companies would be interested in using in the energy and electrical area. And then industrial and utilities. So the CFAT's risk performance standards, the NERC 7628 guidelines for smart grid. Some of these are, so the one for the INGA control system cybersecurity guidelines for natural gas pipeline industries, that would be one. And then the American Works Association, the NERC regulation guides 5.71, and then the NERC 8009 cybersecurity plan for nuclear power reactors. And then we get down into the municipal and the medical care services, have the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act security rules, the Criminal Justice Security, healthcare cybersecurity practices. So some of these, that one I have been involved with. And then the NIST publications, of course, these are the ones that I have been more tied to and have worked with. And that's, so the NIST framework for improving critical infrastructure, the NIST 800-171, the NIST SP 853. So we have an internship program, or we had that at in Ruidoso at our college, working with the New Mexico Public Schools IT department and the public 58 public school districts. So these this would be the standard they use. So we actually help do risk assessments of each one of those public school IT departments to help make sure they were able to connect to the broadband system that was being incorporated into the high schools. And then the NIST, here's for supply chain, and then the 853 version 4. So there's different upgrades for those, the different standards, as you can see. And then financial would be the ACET maturity model and the payment card PCI data security standard. I haven't done anything with financials. The Center of Internet Security Assessments, I haven't done anything with these either, but these are fairly new, I think. So the CISA controls, so you can see kind of what's all available there for the internet. And then process control and SCADA, I've done quite a bit in this area. So the American National Standard, security and industrial automation control systems, the high-level critical infrastructure assessments, the NIST 882, and the version 1 and 2, and then the original versions and updates, as you can see. So they have quite a few in that area. And then under transportation, the TSA pipeline security guidelines, March 2018 to April 2021 version, the TSA validation, architectural design reviews, and then defining a security zone architecture for rail transit and protecting critical zones. And then the TSA pipeline security guidelines, and the network diagram, which I've used this. So some of these you can use like the NIST standards, and for like a SCADA, let's looking at pipelines, and then you could also critical infrastructure framework, and you can even use the integrate the TSA pipeline guidelines. So as complicated as you want to make this, or how comprehensive your organization wants to make it, you can do that with all these different capabilities. Others are catalog of recommendations for version 7, consensus audit guidelines, key questions. A lot of this stuff I have not even looked at. So just to give, but there's so much out here. It's a real comprehensive. And then the DoD I and CSSI frameworks and standards that you can see here. Again, I haven't done anything with any of those. So that's, you can see this is pretty comprehensive. There's a resource library. There's tools that can be used. Let me see if I can go. So here you can import modules. You can build modules, set up trends and compare. And then some of these that are blacked out are because you have to have the enterprise system to be able to do those. And then the resource library, if I go to the resource library, see if it'll come up here. It's taking a few minutes. Okay, there you go. So you can look at all different types of, let's see here. There we go. So you have the different publishers, templates, reports, standards. So if you look at, I don't know if this, it may take a second to get all of these done. Let's see. Just put SCADA. So here's some different publications. It's this is the details. So if you really want to, when you're starting to learn or train your organization, they can actually go into the detailed standards and get that information out of the resource center. So let me just go to the assessments. So I've set up some assessments, some of these. So there's an electrical power assessment, the SCADA company. I mentioned the internship that we have in New Mexico Public Schools. So what's out on Clark is the Dr. No, and it's a diagram based assessment. So what I set up for this in particular was to look at the electrical power, and I wanted to demonstrate that in this presentation, just to give you some idea, because I had one of the key things about this, and developing the modules makes it difficult, is getting the students to understand that these that you have to have the business organization involved, the subject matter experts, both on the business side and on the IT and the OT side, to do these assessments. And then what their really role would be is to learn to understand the tool, understand the risk frameworks that they're working with, and risk assessment methodologies and processes, and that how they facilitate. So this is going to be pushing some of their soft, you might say, soft skills, in order to facilitate working with these professional subject matter experts to help do a risk assessment. And so you can set up, usually when you start the program, it asks for the organization and some information there, and then the assessment type. So we said we're gonna do a network diagram for this, and then it asks for some specific information. What's the gross value of the assets you're trying to protect? Those type of things like that. So you can actually put down the how long you want to spend on this. I probably should have put in there like less than 1 hour, but anyway. And then once you fill out that information, then it looks for the security assurance levels that you want to identify in the group in this. And you can actually can just do a simple, and I just set this up as simple for this particular activity, and I put all of the SALs as low, because if as I mentioned earlier, the more you the higher the security level, the more questions that it will generate. And so that helps generate the questions along with the diagram. So if you wanted to look at the diagram, I can edit the diagram. Okay, so this is that electrical system, and it's shows the actual SCADA central system, and then it provides like the substation, and then it would also include. See if I can go. It's kind of hard to see that, but it includes the IT organization, as well as the central SCADA environment and all of those. So it's kind of hard to see it on this screen, but so let me go back to the CSET. Okay, so once we've got all of our standards identified and the diagrams, it will set up the diagram component questions. And as you see, it's analyzing the network, and then and the actual standards that you've selected based off the security assessment levels. And so the diagram components look at the access control, account management, boundary protection, communication protection, encryption, firewalls, logging, management practices, passwords, physical assessments, policies and procedures, remote access, security content, securing the components, securing the router, securing the system protection, and user authentication. Those are the key ones that it identified. And then if you go into the details and you see the check mark, because I went ahead and answered the questions for these, as you can see. So it'll ask a question. So and this is where we're going to be in the new modules. The avatars will answer these questions, but the students will ask these avatars a question, and then it will answer based on whatever AI criteria we're going to provide based off that critical infrastructure and what we identify as potential risk to that particular system. So access control, it asks, are application developers only given rights needed to develop applications? So this, you can see it asks all these different questions, and I answered yes on all of those. You can also say that you've reviewed that question. Then if I go down to the next, so then it goes into account management. So some of these I just arbitrarily put. So are all unused accounts, groups, and databases removed? So I said no on that one. And then you can also check comments with the content. Here's your supplementary guide that will tell you about that particular what's behind that question. Details on the standards that are tied to that particular question. Any references that you want to put in. Observations with content. So, and you'll see I've put some of those in there, and we'll see them when we get to the summary portion. So So it's the diagram creation that generates the question. Part of it is the diagram, and then the SLAs that I identified ties to the number of questions that are going to be based off of the diagram. And also I've put down, this is just a base on the, if you go back, and I'll go back to that in a minute, but on the assessment information, I said we're just doing a basic assessment. So we're just using mainly the diagram in this case. But if you wanted to use like a critical infrastructure framework as part of that, in addition to the diagram, it's going to generate more questions. Does that answer your question? And then I know I only got about 10 minutes. Okay, good. And then, so again, whoop, let me get back here. So I went through, these are ones on boundary protection. As you can see, I answered no to some of these. So let me just skip on down. So we get through all of these and then answer these questions. And then in a typical class, we do this as a team effort, and that takes usually at least a 1.5 hour class based off of a reduced, like the one that's out on Clark for the medical. And we actually, it takes two weeks, which is basically we're all online. But if you were doing this in a face-to-face class, say that you had an 1.5 hour face-to-face class, it would be basically about a 4 to 6 hours worth of interaction as a team, just to give you some perspective. Then it gives you a summary. The components summary shows how many questions were yes, how many were no from there, and some could be not applicable or an alternative. So maybe you have a mitigated thing. You don't do that, but you have it mitigated. So anyway, so it gives you a summary of the number of yeses, the number of nos, and all of that. And then, so there's 22% of these questions I said were no. So then it looks at those practices and ranks those. So management practices are kind of high level here, where we're not meeting some of the management practices. And then securing the system. So there's some issues around all of those. So you can see it helps identify at a high level, and then ranks those practices. So the shows how many are failed, the ranking, and the ranking could be how critical it is. So securing the router may be more important than management practices at this time. So that's where it's kind of identifying those ranks or priorities. So even though there's a lot, and then it shows the component results. So looking at each one of the components, it's showing how well you meet the security assessment level, and then based off of that, you can help identify where do you need to start addressing your closure of those issues. And then of course you're going to have to come up with a budget. So it answers by component. So this shows that the application server has some issues. The clock part is okay. Database server. So like one of the questions I answered was the database server and the SCADA system are all in the same server. That's not a good practice. Okay, so anyway, that just to give you some examples there. Firewall, there was a bunch of no's on the firewall. I can't remember what I said there, but anyway, that kind of gives you an idea of what the helps you identify where you need to start concentrating your work. There are no network warnings because all the firewalls and stuff were in place, but it will do an analysis of the network. And if you had a firewall, say you had an internet access and no firewall in there, it would probably flag that. And then high-level assessment description, it will provide that in an executive summary, and then comments, and then again, it kind of gives you a summary of how you want to look at each one of these. So if you wanted to look at a site cybersecurity plan, it would it'll generate that plan for you, and it kind of goes through, of course, a disclaimer, and then it kind of gives you the introduction, and then the environment you were looking at, and executive management summary, and then look what you could do with the steering committee, the system owners, the data owners, identifies all those, and then it gives you some cost analysis information. I'm just going through this fairly fast, but so it also a diagram. It gives you the what was in the actual assets that were out there on the diagram, and the level, security level, moderate, low, what that would mean as far as what you need to do to address those. And so that's kind of a quick overview. Let me go back again to, and then you can export these reports. You can get an executive summary, which on this particular one, if I remember right, let me see. I didn't specify all the details here, so let's see what happens. So it kind of talks about the overall compliance based off of that. So overall, you're about 88% compliant, and then it talks about what you identified as confidentiality, integrity, and availability. In reality, you're going to be having your business management and the C-suite and the CISO and them identifying what are the SLAs, and then but everything we're doing for the classroom is trying to just make it to where we get through an assessment in a timely manner. And then the analysis of the network, again, it talks about the high in the module itself. We ask the students to take this information and develop a report, so that ties back to their what you want to call soft skills and communicating to management. And then in this case, the instructor would be the one that would be assessing those executive management tools. So, okay, so Mike, okay, we only have about 3 minutes. So again, if you want more information, you can contact me at sdmillertx@gmail.com. I guess I can put that back up there, but you're going to get the information from Mike. He's going to share the video again, and also the PowerPoint presentation. If you need assistance with the CSET, feel free to contact me. I'd be glad to help. Any other questions anyone has on this? And I think it's going to be good when we get the avatar in there, the avatars to be the subject matter experts and the business experts, so that we can make this more realistic. The one that's in the CSET tool module and the business continuity disaster recovery modules and course that's in Clark is it's pretty intensive in time, and it really with the avatars it'll help cut down the time it takes in the classroom to get the I think the important objectives done for the student outcomes for the students, and understanding what they need to know about risk assessments. Yeah, Mike put a survey in there. I guess there's any clarification question. Yeah, okay. I just had that one about the diagram. And again, if you do one with the standards, it's a lot. It will come up with different areas. And so we've done some of these in boot camps at the college through our community services with different actual companies. And so, like I said, well, one we did with a company, with a pipeline company that took 2 months just to do the one. And so again, that's quite a big commitment for a company or corporation. You can get the Idaho labs at some, if you're a critical infrastructure, I think I might not be speaking truthfully for them, so they can, you need to talk to somebody there like Eleanor Taylor or something, but they will help provide training and services for the CSET tool and many other tools they have on the Idaho labs, along with CISA and their tools. So thanks, everybody. I hope this helps. And
I'll just add too, Stephen, that we already have your slides posted on the web and your email address is out there too. So if you go to the membership webpage and you click on today's meeting, you'll see the description, the slides, and Stephen's email address.
okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for attending, and please fill out that survey. It really helps us with this event and future ones. Have a great weekend.
Great job, Stephen.
Thanks, Michael.
Hey, Stephen.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye.